Before I put the top on the table, I need to insert some 3/8 T-nuts into the bottom of the legs. The reason for the T-nuts is to allow me to insert these adjustable feet that I made. I made it just from pretty basic components. I bought this angle bracket from the hardware store and cut it in half to get 2 flat pieces. Standard 3/8 bolt. I rounded off the head of the bolt on the grinder because I wanted it to fit into that hole. I could have put the bolt just on the surface of the plate, but I wanted it to be as low profile as possible, so that's why I decided to insert it into the hole, welded it on the bottom. And then glued on these anti-vibration rubber pads, also bought from the hardware store. They're sold already cut to this size, which is about 50 mil square, which was just perfect. With the new frame now complete, it was time to get rid of the old to make way for the new. And as you can see, I couldn't get it out of there quick enough. I might take a moment here just to have a quick look at my router lift. Unfortunately, I built this before I started making YouTube videos, so there's no build video. But if it looks familiar to you, if you think it looks like a car jack, then you're exactly right, because that's what it's modelled off. Completely made out of scrap wood that I had lying around, and I've got to say it works brilliantly. The size of the top of the outfeed table is 1500mm by 900mm. It was good to be able to get the top in one piece out of this big sheet of melamine, although it was way too big to fit in my workshop, so I just took it outside and cut it there. To make the top fit, I had to actually cut a recess on the underside of it to fit over the dust enclosure on the back of the table saw. So after marking it out, I just set up some temporary fences and used a straight bit in the router. And then to protect that raw chipboard and to seal it up, I just gave it a couple of coats of clear polyurethane. I just quickly wanted to go over the reasons why I chose melamine for the top of the outfeed table. First of all, it's very easily available and fairly inexpensive. The other reason is that it's a very stable and flat material. The melamine itself is really hard wearing, and it's also quite slippery, so that'll help with it being an outfeed table. I could have used MDF, but I would have had to have clear coated that, and that may have needed reapplying, so didn't really want to do that. And I'm not concerned about needing anything quite, heavier, because it is an outfeed table only. It's not meant to be a workbench. I could easily do some light assembly work on this as well, but that framework that I have underneath is more than enough to give it lots of rigidity that it needs. I'm going to protect the edge of the melamine by adding this pine moulding. I've had this moulding in the workshop a number of years now, just stored away, and this seems like a good reason to use it. I can't even remember why I bought it in the first place. So yeah, I'm just going to glue and nail that on the edge. Like I said, it'll protect that raw edge on the melamine board. And I think it'll also give it just a more substantial look. It'll make it look like it's thicker and heavier than it actually is. I also added a small piece of melamine to the underside of the top to reinforce the area where I was going to cut the tracks to match and extend the Ttracks in the table saw. Then it was time for a quick coat of paint in what's now become the standard colour for the workshop. I didn't want any screws showing on the top surface of the table, so it was actually fixed in place with a few of these right angle brackets underneath and construction adhesive. You'll notice here that I added an extra support in the centre of the table. I just thought that centre space was a bit too much of a span at nearly 700 millimetres. And to finish off the top, I just took off that sharp corner on the top edge with a 5mm round over bit in my trim router. Now it was time to level up the table to match the table saw itself. I left the outfeed table about 1/8 or 3mm lower than the table saw, and this is where those adjustable feet really came in. To extend the lines of the Ttracks in the table saw, I just inserted the length of 19mm pine batten into the track, which happens to be an exact fit, and used that to mark the lines on the outfeed table. I wanted to put some aluminium channel into the tracks on the outfeed table to protect them, and I already had this length of 25mm square tube and thought I could just rip it in half lengthways on the table saw. To cut the slots in the outfeed table to the exact width of the channel, I used my adjustable housing jig. The jig works by using the actual piece you want to insert to set the gap, whether it be this channel or a piece of board for a shelf. Then by using a router with a pattern bit or a straight bit with a bearing and guiding it along the inside edges of the gap in the jig, you get a slot that is the exact size you need. I ripped the square tube on the table saw to make two U-channels 10mm high. And as you can see by that continuous thin slither coming off that piece, it definitely pays to have your table saw set up accurately. The aluminium channel I used was only light duty with a wall thickness of about 1mm, so I didn't really want to try and countersink that for screw heads, so I just used construction adhesive again to fix them in place.